I'm going to talk to you today about, I guess it falls under racism that I've experienced. I grew up in Georgia, grew up in the South, in a small town called Thomasville. Thomasville, Georgia is the city of roses and the home of the big oak. You know, every town, like Durham is the bull city, Thomasville is the city of roses, home of the big oak. When I grew up, not so long ago, I thought that there were just two colors. There was black and white. I dealt with only black people. Went to my school, my church, all the places that I dealt with was just black people. Now, I knew there were white people in the town, but I didn't have anything to do with them. At the time, it's important to understand that the laws of the United States, the laws of the land said that everybody was equal and that everybody had access to the same things. But that's not how it was. That's just not how it was. So I didn't have a lot of dealings with white people because it was not always safe. You know, we were taught to not talk back to someone if they were white, because a white person could do just about anything to you if you were black without there being consequence. I especially was afraid of, there was a river that ran through Thomasville called the Ochlockonee River. And on more than one occasion, I heard the adults talking about somebody that had been found dead in the river. You know, people would just disappear. And because they had somehow crossed a white person in some way, and they just found them dead in the river. Well, I decided I didn't want to end up there, so it was best not to deal with white people. That gives you the impression that the encounters that I did have were not pleasant ones when I had occasion to, you know, deal with a white person. And one incident in particular stands out in my mind. And when we talked, I told you, I think you asked what was the most impressionable thing or most important thing that happened to me, and this is that story. I was walking on the street going downtown one day, and it was Jurgis Street in Thomasville, and that was a street that white people lived on. We didn't live on, it wasn't the way it is. You can ride around Durham and you'd see neighborhoods that have all kinds of people. Well, it wasn't like that then. There was the black side, there was the white side. You didn't have mixing like that. So I was walking down the street, and it was a really nice street. The houses were big, and they had nicely cut green lawns. And I was just walking down, looking at the nice scenery, and this car passed by. It was a bright yellow convertible with 4 white boys in the car. To this day, I can remember very clearly that nice shiny car. And they passed by me, the car drove past me, and as they passed by, one of them yelled out, "Hey, nigger bitch." Now, how many of you know about that word nigger? You know that that's derogatory. You know that people don't want to be called that. Okay, well, when I was growing up, I was called nigger so many times. My initial is DNC. I thought my name was Dorothy Nigger Clark, and that's the truth. So these boys passed by, and they just said, "Hey, nigger bitch." I didn't know them, hadn't done anything to them. They just thought it was funny because they passed by and they were laughing. Well, I just decided that day that I was tired of being called a nigger. I was tired, and it might not change. It might not, you know, I would be called that again, but I wasn't going to hear somebody call me that and not do anything about it. Prior to that, if somebody called me a negative label, I just, especially if they were white, have to qualify that. If a white person called me a negative name, I just had to just ignore it. But this day, when the boys passed by in that yellow car and just thought it was so funny, I just decided I wouldn't take that anymore. So I looked around for something to throw at that shiny new car. If I could find a brick or a rock, I was just going to throw it, at least dent it. I think I knew the car was important because it was new and it was shiny, and I was actually going to throw something at the car. I wouldn't have thrown it at them, I don't think, because I knew that that would have been big trouble. I knew that that would have been. So I looked around, but on this street, because they had these nice green lawns and the yards were clear, there wasn't anything to pick up. There wasn't a rock, there wasn't a stray brick, there wasn't anything there. So by this time they're gone and I'm standing there just angry. That's all just angry and feeling that there was nothing I could do. Okay, so at that time, I was 14 years old. When this event happened, I was 14, and I was in 9th grade. I was a very good student. I was usually ahead of my class, and in 9th grade, I took algebra, and I finished the entire book on my own. I went all the way to the end because the class was going too fast for me, too slow for me, so I finished it. The class only got to like 3/4 of the way through the book. They got through chapter 9, and I went further than they did. So I had a very good teacher who was concerned about all the students. So he saw that I was bored in the class. So he went to the guidance counselor and said, "We have to do something with Dorothy." And by that he meant they wanted to make sure that I was challenged. So they came up with a program that you can still apply to, a program called ABC, and it stands for A Better Chance. The program provided full scholarships to low-income students from across the United States, and placed them in private boarding schools. And the thought was that by exposing the students to a different way of life, that it would expand their worldview, that it would give them broader options. And I applied to that program and I was accepted.